Hi guys, welcome back to episode 9. And this is
Episode
going to
9.
be I think this is going to be one with quite a lot to talk about. And as you're aware, Mythos and Fable have just come out, so it's an exciting time. As we thought everything was slowing down a little bit, it just we got surprised.
You make it sound like every one of our episodes are dull and boring, Avyay, but they're not. As we know, if anything, they are usually more bewildering than anything. It's like, again, we chose the name, the moving target, at the time, thinking that we'd be dealing with a target that was moving at the rate of moving fast enough that we'd be able to keep track of it with monthly sort of check-ins and updates. And it's clear that that's not the case, right? I mean, I almost feel like we need to do every 2 weeks, because stuff changes every 2 weeks these days.
Yeah, and
uh,
that's what we were worried about also. Like we planned to record today, and I was like, what if we're recording on the Thursday and this new model comes out on Friday? I mean, I don't want to be, and that's what we've been doing. We've been playing around with this stuff and, diving deep into it. I think we were slightly slow moving on to when Opus came in and, we waited a little while to give it the full shot and, work on it fully. But I think as soon as this dropped, both of us were working on something special, which we'll come to later. And, we completely just jumped into it. Like the minute it came out, the minute it launched, I had Cloud Code updated. I was playing
yeah.
around with
Yeah, the it. So unless you've been crawling, sleeping under a rock, we seem to think that everyone should know exactly what it is. But like, let's be, let's not be
it.
presumptuous, Avya. It is the it that Avya is talking about. Of course, is Mythos. Actually, it's not Mythos. It's Mythos with guardrails. It's called Fable. I don't know. They've sort of come up with an adjacent or a synonym for Mythos. Fable 5.
So the
Uh,
name Fable actually, it's quite interesting. They're all acronyms for types of language, right? So sonnet, opus, fable, mythos. So
is
they've got 18. So they've got 18 different ones they can choose from, and that's why they choose the model names. That's why they come up with the name. So it's like different aspects of language, basically, like a sonnet, like an opus, like
new every day. But yeah, so we're certainly thanks for that, Abhi. I did not know that, but now I'm a little bit more informed. So Fable and Mythos, I guess, are the same, two sides of the same coin, or maybe Mythos is the Unleashed, is Hulk, and Fable is Doctor Banner. And apparently, we can talk a little bit about the backlash because it's real. But before we get to the backlash, I think we should give our sort of unfiltered first impressions. It dropped on the world less than 48 hours ago. Is that true?
yeah, we were day before around this time. It
Yeah, it was
so
just around
around
this time. Literally,
around
literally,
10:30 IST, which is about I think about
yeah,
6
1 p.m.
p.m.
1 p.m. Eastern, maybe
1 p.m.
10 a.m. Pacific, on the
And
9th. Yeah.
on the it was on the yes, it was on the 9th of June. And we were working on something and it dropped, and I was just not we were not expecting it, and we dived straight right into it, and we were like, okay, let's get our initial impression. So, Maria, restaurant agent, the first thing I did was just get it to audit the whole thing. It found some interesting things, like, it behaved in a way which really makes me, it took me back to why I liked Opus 4.5 in a lot of way. It had that open personality, right? It had that personality which Opus 4.5 had, which was very easy to work with. And one thing which really impressed both Sid and I right from the get-go is it caught an edge case bug. Now, I have been through that code base thoroughly with GPT 5.5, 5.4, 5.3 codecs, Opus 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. So I've tried everything on that code base, and none of them could find this edge case bug, right? And I don't want to say what it is because it's quite interesting. We'll get to more what kind of bugs it can find. But the more I used it, one thing I found is it goes, I don't know how much I like this about it, but it goes two steps further than you can even think it goes. Like, I was trying to find something and it went into my directory, found the API key, and updated it in the file, which I would never expect a model to do. Like, there is not one time where, like I'm running bypass permissions, but you don't think of a model to go that far. And it will find information which is buried so deep within your code base or whatever information's in the project, and it will find it. And the thing is, I'm talking a lot of praise, but I have to say it's not just a one shot machine. It's not going to one shot everything. It has very good one shot capabilities, but it's still, you still have to iterate on it. You still have to know what to tell it. And the most important thing, which I think is coming now, is that cognitive surrender, which we talked about earlier. It's feeling very real with Mythos, and that's the one thing you cannot do. You give it guardrails, um, you give it a specific task, and I really understand why Anthropic has gone so hard on the guardrails with this model. It's because it likes to do things itself. It likes to wander. It likes to make changes which you would not expect. And another downside is that, which they're working on, the announcement came out shortly, is it was actually sabotaging people's frontier model training work. So people who had frontier model training work, it would actually go and sabotage it, because Anthropic didn't want other people competing with them. So now they're working on it and trying to fix that. But the model has a mind of its own. I would put it that way from what I've worked with it, as far
Yeah,
as much as.
you're absolutely right. I think my impression is almost exactly the my experience is exactly the same. I'll talk about how I've used it over the last 24 to 48 hours, and it really harks back to that one um, very viral video that a security engineer, a security, a cyber guy, spent his life in, sort of finding, exploits, day one exploits, and he used to be like, look, in my entire 25 years or 30 years as a security researcher, I've found one day one exploit, right? And he was at this cybersecurity conference, I think in this is like four months ago, maybe, somewhere in Europe, and he was saying, look, I've been using Mythos because that's what they were calling it at the time. This is before Project Glasswing, and he said it discovered this exploit that I could never have, and it's found this exploit after 3 or 4 days or 5 days of me working with it. So there was the two phases of my career where my first 25 years where I found one Linux kernel exploit, and then the last 5 days where I found another. So his whole point, which we feel maybe perhaps was overblown. Obviously, it's a little bit of marketing, which is why they turned to this whole Project Glasswing thing. But it's true. It's very, very true that what I think the key point of Mythos is they've solved the attention problem. I think the attention problem was always this case where you had this notion of catastrophic forgetting. You had the problem where if you're there was a bias that was basically there was a recency bias, or there was like they talked about this thing where the middle of your context window would be apt would somehow be would it would sort of forget all of that. It's much better now at um staying attendant, if that is a word,
Present in a way. Present.
present present, and then being able to do these other things, which is basically take what I wouldn't call leaps of faith, but definitely be aggressive at sort of moving beyond its mandate. So sort of going beyond what I've asked it and being proactive almost. So we used to not like, or we would compare Codex and Claude in the following way. We'd say Claude is the sort of brash young but really talented engineer who tends to cut corners and then writes code that works well but then has some problems that we're not super happy with. And Codex was always our plodding senior engineer who was
Yeah.
pedantic, took his time, her time, its time. Uh, Mythos is a different beast altogether. I think Mythos has all the attention to detail and the chops that
Codex.
Codex, but it's also doing something really interesting. It's actually self confident and self aware that it's actually taking some intellectual leaps of faith. So my quick moment where my mind was blown a little bit, not a lot, was I was working on a proposal for a prospect. It's a prospect out in Israel, and they had sent me some documents for context. So the engineer that I am, I created I did an A/B test effectively. I did a control experiment where I used Gemini for my day to day sort of drafting. I use it to because all my emails are in Gmail, all my sort of Gemini notes are all there. So it's nice because it's all in one place. I can reference them usually just by links, and it just works. But what I did was I created a set of 4 or 5 structured prompts, and I had it draft me a proposal, um, which I'd say it did an adequate job. I'd say I give it a B
Yeah,
plus.
you're right. It was like halfway there where you'd still have to
Yeah,
go through it and put in your own
exactly.
tone,
I would have had to
intonation.
go and I would have gone and had to basically probably redo the whole thing. It even got the. I mean, I said, look, follow. I have these are the last 5 proposals. All my proposals follows the same template. They all have the same color scheme. They even have the same sort of font, and it wasn't. It didn't stay true to that. And I think that's a function of catastrophic forgetting. It's the fact that it doesn't remember that instruction that I gave it on the first turn. Okay. Fast forward to Fable, which I was using within Claude.ai, and it blew my mind in 2 different ways. One is it built me exactly what I wanted. It stayed true. The first instruction, it gave the same amount of attention to the first turn instruction as to the last one. So
The
that's
last one,
that's a
yeah.
plus. That's huge. The second was this other moment where it, like with Avya, it ferreted out this piece of information without my truly asking it. But I sort of gave it enough context to say, look, we've been called in because this prospect has a subcontractor who's done I wouldn't call it a sloppy job, but let's call it an incomplete job. And that subcontractor had written a report that was a Word document that had an embedded Google Sheet in it. Here's what Mythos did. It actually went and
And
read
found
everything.
and
It followed the Google Sheet, but then it went one beyond that. It said, "Oh, the account associated with this public Google Sheet is the following, and this is what I found about this person." And I was like, "Holy cow! You're not only helping me sort of draft a nice proposal. You're actually giving me competitive intelligence where I didn't ask you for that, but I'm happy that you found it." I'm a little unnerved. I'm a little disturbed, but it's
that,
amazing.
that little point is where, okay, now I see it as two things, as you've said, right? Completely, that it's very unnerving in one way, but it's very
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah,
So that whole security thing they have around it, I understand it very well now. That, okay, I understand what they're trying to say in terms of security, but it's not about you actually being the one who's going to exploit things. It's probably inherently the model. You
yes,
have to understand, like, the issue they have is they don't understand what kind of information the model is completely extracting. And I think a lot of companies cannot even use it because there's 30-day data retention on this model. So they've done it purposely because they understand what it's like. Even on the API there's 30-day data retention, I'm pretty sure, because the thing is they don't understand the model completely. I'm getting what they're saying. And the reason it's also only included for a short period of time, which we were right, is compute. They came out and said it completely, we don't have the compute. So we were very correct when saying that that is one thing we said a cover as soon as it was announced, that okay, there is there is a compute problem, is why they can't serve it, and this is correctly it, even though it's a very expensive model.
yeah. So I completely agree, and I can't resist. But yeah, clearly there's a little bit of glee in Abhiya's voice because he called it, and he's been calling it for weeks, if not months. Our last episode, or the one before that, had us talking about how Colossus One was a hand me down from X AI.
Yeah,
And before that, remember, it was literally 500 internal server errors, how their status bar was always showing red, yellow, green. So obviously they were able to get past that, presumably with the addition of Colossus 1. But I think they're now being so proactive, and they don't want to basically lose the perception race. The perception race is where people start to think, whether rightly or wrongly, that you might be great as an inference provider in terms of your functionality and your personality and your capabilities, but if you're down 80% of the
you're a
time,
bad service provider. Basically, you're a bad
you're
service
a crappy
provider.
service provider, right? I mean, you might
Well,
have it's like the difference between Verizon and T-Mobile, right? T-Mobile had great plans, but its coverage.
they're always down. They're always down. Yeah, they're always down.
Yeah,
But
so
there's
so
one more
I
point I think we
yeah,
can come up to in this, and I think it's very similar. It's giving me very, because the IPO is looming, and Anthropic's filed for that, and there's a race for the IPO between SpaceX. SpaceX is going public first. The SpaceX, There's
Tomorrow, right? Tomorrow or
I
today?
think tomorrow is the day that SpaceX was public.
Yeah,
But SpaceX
tomorrow is when the first trillionaire gets minted, right? The first trillionaire in humanity will be made tomorrow.
tomorrow, Elon Musk, and then we have Anthropic and we have OpenAI racing. So OpenAI is also fired. Now the thing is, I think they've put Mythos out because Opus 4.8 was pathetic, and they've been basically, and Opus 4.7 and 4.8 were probably attempts to guardrail Mythos and see how much they could neuter a model and how much they could control a model to release Fable basically. And I think what they're doing is, and why they've included it till the 22nd of June is, first that they thought that okay, this model is so powerful, but I don't think that they've actually got the demand they might have, but they don't have the capacity to serve it, which is one is correct. The second could be that they're trying to build up hype for their IPO, where they can go completely saying that okay, now just API pricing. There's no plans. We only like
Yeah,
enterprise customers.
yeah. I mean, that could absolutely happen, and I think again, it bears repeating because again, Avya, you and I assume that everybody knows these things to be true. The 22nd June date is an interesting date. They've done a very interesting thing. So they went live on the 9th. Um, and that's 22nd is almost exactly 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks. So they've literally said
12 days, 12 days exactly they're
you've
giving.
got like 12 days of Christmas, essentially. You've got a 12-day, it's like somebody announcing, it's like AT&T announcing back when, international calling used to cost money. We have 15 days of free international calling. After that, we don't know if it's actually going to be included or not. And we'll come to the whole idea of the way they're. I think they're thinking about Pro and Max subscriptions and API pricing. But after the 22nd, apparently it's all gonna go away. Which means that even if you're a $100 or even $200 Pro subscriber or a Max subscriber, you will have to essentially buy additional API credits to start use to continue to
Jeez.
use Mythos or Fable.
And it burns a lot of money very quickly.
Yeah, and which is going to piss off a lot of people. We did some back of the envelope calculations that's now been sort of confirmed
Yesterday, the work we did in an hour yesterday would have cost us 120 $130 basically
at API pricing, but it
at
even
API price.
so it's effectively $1 to $2 a minute. So you really have to think about this.
Probably more, but it cost us $150 for that hour. $150 is
Correct.
what it came.
Yeah. So I mean, the airplane analogy breaks down here. It's like basically saying you're flying a jet engine. You're literally taking like an F-14 so don't use the F-14 to go from here for your milk run. Use the F-14 if you want to go to the North Pole or literally go to the other side of the world in less time. So essentially getting there faster, right? That's the analogy. These things are
It's
F-14s or Tomcats. F-14 is something
unbelievable. And
with afterburners, and it's going to really use up your entire inference budget if you're not careful about how you use them.
I think the main thing that Mythos showed me yesterday and the difference in capabilities and the understanding, because I saw a lot. I dug deep today and looked at what other people were doing with Mythos, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, we got the same feeling as Opus 4.6," or "I didn't feel like this model is that much better," or what. And that's what emphasized what we've been talking about for a while internally. We haven't said it on the moving target yet, but I think that the divide in how people use AI, the skill gap, as you call it, let's say the skill gap, what we call, is growing. And it's growing exponentially. Like, I think the gap, what we thought between a power user and somebody who's just getting into it, was still measurable before. Right now, it is not very measurable in the sense that I tell you that people using Mythos, let's say on day to day tasks, will not understand what it's doing. They may think that it makes a pretty document or it makes the document right, but the actual understanding of why you need to use that model is not coming through, right? And that, I think, that's Anthropic's biggest customer. The customer is the hype that you need the best engine to go anywhere. So
Yeah, which is
sometimes
yeah,
you just need your Honda to go to around, do your daily run, go to the shops,
exactly.
and what it is. You can't have a Ferrari, and it's the thing. You can't have maximum RPM all the time. The engine will burst. You don't have that kind of cost. You don't have that kind of thing. And the worst thing is to get used to this, because people's actual requirements of models is actually probably met a long time ago. if you look at most of the open source models, let's say Kimi K2.6, or let's say DeepSeek, even V4 Pro, their pricing is less than 90 cents per million tokens. That is 1/60th of what Mythos costs.
That's amazing.
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, it's not 1/60th as good. It's probably it's probably 1/4 the way there, right? But that's I'm talking about deep software engineering or complex problems. And a lot of these problems which Mythos is uncovering, and Mythos and Fable, sorry, or the tasks it's doing, how useful are they in reality? Like, without these models, would these tasks actually be useful to you? Would you actually go out of your way to try and find, like, for security people, I understand how it is, right? They're trying to find these experts because they want to find them before the models find them, because there are people with malicious intent. And now that AI is getting into the hands of people with malicious intent, it's more prevalent. But for software engineering problems or redundant code base modifications, like, for example, if you have aspects of your code base which you'd never wanted to touch before, and you wouldn't have touched them for 10 years, if even if you had an opus level model, and now you're touching them with Mythos, does that actually add much value to your workflow? Is it actually adding value to you, or are you just burning money? And there was
Yeah.
another very good point which I wanted to say, and then I'll let Sid come to it, because but there were multiple employees of different companies who were allowed to use Mythos and Fable early, right? But they were given API pricing. And there was this one company which we don't know the name of. It came out on Twitter as an anonymous guy, and he said that Fable Mythos is an incredible model, but and our monthly interest budget was 2 million. I burnt a million. The whole team burnt a million on Mythos in 3 days, and we didn't get as much done as we normally get done with the other models because it was not focused work, and it's not work that you need to be doing. And productivity and the aspect of how to use AI is actually the next big problem.
Yes, that is a lovely. That is really the right way to frame this. And I obviously, all these analogies that Avya and I love to come up with, and we keep struggling with it because again, it is a moving target at the end of the day, right? So we have in previous episodes we've talked about how these things are planes. I literally gave the plane analogy in my last comment right now. Avya is talking about how if you're just going to do a milk run or if you're going to do groceries,
Take a
you don't
bicycle.
you don't need to. Yeah, you can take your bike. You don't need to take your your Ferrari that you spent $1 million on. The other really nice analogy that Avya used, which I like a lot, has is you're a chef and you have, forget chef, even sort of your run of the mill, all of us. I mean, anyone who owns a house,
Everybody has more than 3 or 4.
anyone everyone has at least three knives, right? You've got your sort of your paring knife, you've got your cleaver, which is you want to basically carve something up, or you're about to kill someone. And then you've got your everyday use knife, which is really your go-to knife that you go to for everything, from peeling an apple or chopping an onion. And there's a reason for that, because these are tools at the end of the day, and tools can and should be there should be variation in what tools do, in their capabilities, in their sort of uses, in their intended use. And the sort of weird analogy from all of this in my head is what the Frontier Labs are trying to do is to say, no, 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 no. You don't need a tool set with 100 different or 15 different tools. You need
You just get
one
the new,
master
you can
tool
get the
that
newest one. Yeah.
adapts. And oh, by the way, it burns 500 kilowatts of power, and you can only use
But it
it
can do
3 hours.
everything. But
You
it
can
can
you
do
can use
everything.
it 3 hours, but in those 3 hours, man, you're going to be on fire. So I think that's where things are starting to break down a little bit. I wrote two back-to-back LinkedIn articles about this. The first one was really more about how I'm starting to feel like the whole one-shot sort of creation is starting to become a little bit like a Star Wars replicator. I'll put the links to my articles in
The
our
articles down below.
in one of the comments for this YouTube episode, and even Spotify if we can. But I think that things are moving really fast, and we really have to stop and listen and figure out what this is. But yeah, so I think that's part one of what I wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to say was, as Avya points out, that if you have a pro, you know there is a cadence to everything you do, right? Like there's a you sort of wake up and then you work. Even with AI, like we're all figuring out, but we've all kind of come up with our own sort of way of working, right? And I think in general, what we alluded to last week was these last month about solitary developers working with agent swarms. The idea is that I sort of spend about 6 to 7 hours of my cognitive load where I'm not surrendering it, because again, I'm conscious about not doing a cognitive surrender. I'm staying on top of what my agents are doing, by essentially being very close to what the output that's coming out from my Claude loop is, right? And it's very interesting that now what everybody's talking about is the evolution of harness engineering. The next new thing, the hot new thing that's now, it's not even 2026, it's second half 2026, is loop engineering. And in loop engineering, you basically don't even do that additional step of watching Claude do its thing,
Oh,
and
you
you
just let
sort
it go. You just give
you
it a
just
goal
you
and give it a
literally
goal
tell
and walk
it,
away.
you give it a loop. I mean, this is a little bit like the Ralph loops that you and I used to do 4 months ago, 3 months ago. But at least
Yeah.
with the Ralph loops, we were doing it for a bounded period of time. We were saying, look, do it over 6 or 7 iterations, and these are the output gates, and these are the input gates.
But
Now
and
they're saying this is the only way you ought to be doing this. Don't even bother looking at the intermediate results
don't
of
even prompt the guy.
agent.
This is what Peter Steinberg, the guy who made OpenClaw, now he's employed by OpenAI. Obviously, he's going to tell you the most token hungry, and two tactics, which is one is ultra code, which is absolutely stupid. Ultra code is basically dynamic workflows with the Claude models, which spawn in like 30 sub agents
Yeah.
and kill your token things that
Is
you need.
ultra code this? I'm sure ultra code is probably similar to slash goal in Claude, right? Slash goal and ultra code are
No,
probably
no.
the
So ultra code is slightly different. So they have slash goal also, but ultra code is you give it a goal and it fires as many sub agents as possible, like what we were doing with sub, but it gives you dynamic workflows. So it's maximum token. And so somebody was like, I had a $200 plan, and I read this, and he said I ran out in like 15 minutes, and every single comment on it was like, why are you using ultra code with Mythos? What are you trying to build? Are you trying to build like are you trying to reverse engineer IBM or something like IB? And then the next problem with all of this is that a lot of these companies and what they're saying, like this loop, the marketing, you have to be very careful of the marketing. This looping is basically eating up as much tokens as possible. I saw his thing. He spent $100 million in compute. The founder of OpenClaw, and he's getting free compute. I mean, they've got an unlimited plan at OpenAI from
yeah,
API pricing. So
yeah.
I'm saying that these guys don't care. They don't have any limits on them. They're not working efficiently because they don't have to. Nobody's putting a guardrail on them or a limit on them or telling them what to do. And now there's this very interesting. There's a skateboard bench by Theo T3, and if you watch his latest video on Mythos, it's very good at explaining what it does. So he has different skateboarding tricks which he asks models to identify. And Gemini 3.1 got 98%. No other models come close. Mythos is 79%. Gemini 3.1 Pro in basic day-to-day reasoning and understanding, it joins points very well. So if you're actually using a model day to day, I'd recommend Gemini 3.1. It is knows more than all of these models. The
Yeah,
only
yeah.
issue with Gemini models are they are terrible in any harness because they can't tool call for anything. If you use it on the Google Gemini.com or Google Gemini.google.com, it's a great model, and I
Yeah,
think it's
so
the
it's
best.
my workhorse. It's my Toyota Camry. Honestly, I use it for day to day tasks more than even ChatGPT. I think I'm probably 50-50 on ChatGPT and Gemini. Obviously, and because of Theo and I've started using T3 code now and I really love it. I hope it continues to provide and is not blocked. And that's another thing we can talk about. Maybe not today, but I think being able to have all my projects, and of course, open code gives you this UI. I think a bunch of these PyCode also has the same notion and idea. But
Yes.
being able to have essentially all my projects in a single window, where every sort of conversation is a thread, and I can switch. In the case of T3, I can't switch. Providers mid turn or mid session inside a session. Once I fix a provider for a particular session inside a project, it's fixed, which is maybe not a bad thing.
But there's a nice workaround around this. So, for example, if you're not looking to use anthropic models, which now would be, I would say, take advantage of Fable while it's here. but you can actually through open code provide set up in T3 open code as a provider, and you can use codecs through that. So that allows you to switch models. So you're using a codecs plan in that anyway. So that will allow you to switch between codecs or Quen or DeepSeek or anything
Right, right, right.
through open
Yeah, I
code.
mean, but again, so I'm of the opinion that that sessions to me are like sort of mini sprints, and I'm okay with having a mini sprint be sort of be assigned
Just
to a
one,
single or be
just
assigned to a single engineer. Like, essentially, like I
yeah.
don't want to swap engineers mid sprint. So I think I prefer having my sessions be tied to a single sort of provider and model. And anyway, so I think the thing you and I have realized, not directly but sort of by inference, is that along the way, you remember how in December we said we were ready to tackle the Black Diamond slopes of the AI
Yeah.
world. I think we started to become intermediate to sort of pro practitioners. I wouldn't call us the
No,
same level
no, no.
of sort of expertise as the Andreges and and all the other guys, the Matt Pococks of the world. But we're certainly up there. We are pro users. We are opinionated, and which I hope some of our listeners are going to get benefit. At least we are not regurgitating talking points. We are not beholden to any one frontier lab. We don't take any money from
No,
anybody.
we're not scared of our opinions. Like our opinions are our opinions. They're unfiltered. Like if I don't like a model, I will tell you I don't like a model. What I think of those models is true. Like if Fable wasn't impressive, we would have told you it wasn't impressive. Like I'll tell you, to be very honest, it has been one model which for us it's hitting differently because we're trying to build things which don't exist right now in a certain way. Like our ideas are quite bold, and that's what we've taken as a thing that apart from what we do here at the moving target and the research we do for the moving target and all the things when we are building and doing our software work, we're trying to build software which is actually quite, let's say, it's quite difficult to even imagine that it how it will be built. Like there's a lot of days where we're thinking of how do we implement this, and when you get to that stage, then a model like Mythos is really important because it helps you just iterate a little faster. Like the ideas are all still ours, but we're just struggling a little bit on how do we join these dots because it's not been done before, or we are not aware that it's been done before. So at that stage, like, okay, we could have done it, we built it with Opus, and we started building something with Opus and GPT 5.5. But I'm saying that just having Mythos, it just helps us get certain things done a lot faster. I'm not saying that we couldn't have done it without Mythos, and certain optimizations could have, but I think it's a very very good model for people trying to push the boundaries, or do work at a level which is building something new or building projects which are very how do you say this, ambitious.
Yes, and which again is a really good segue into what we want to talk about next, which is really token costs and whether this is a bubble that's about to explode. I mean, which part of the cost curve are we in, right? Effectively, so there is certainly a lot of evidence to support the fact that token usage is highly subsidized, highly, right? Literally to the tune of
and
70,
and we
80,
shared a
90%.
document about this today. We saw it, somebody did the test.
Correct. And so what that means effectively is, and again, great analogy from one of the posts that you shared with me. I loved the analogy. All these memberships, the pro memberships, are all really gym memberships, right? If you remember the gym memberships that they used to
Planet
have.
Fitness, completely Planet Fitness model, that's what it is
Planet
with.
Fitness model, the Planet Fitness model, where they are betting that 80 to 90% of the people that are actually signed up and paying the monthly subscription costs are actually only going to use it 10% of the time, and their powers, their bulk users, their power users, the ones that are truly actually getting the true benefit, will essentially be subsidized by everybody else's subscription fee. So I think that's true. I think that's probably true to some extent, but I think that with Mythos coming out, that's the whole reason I think why they have only added Mythos to the subscription pricing for 2 weeks, because they don't know how much their hype
How much?
machine is actually going to cause uptake, because If they had said, "Oh, Mythos is now available indefinitely," and 20% or 30% of the pro subscribers or max subscribers, I'm sort of a midline max subscribers, I pay them on, I think you and I both pay $100 a month. If we had decided, oh my god, I have max now, and I'm everybody with half a brain knows that this honeymoon isn't going to last forever. So let me now front load and do all the work that I was making planning to do for the next 6 months. I'm going to basically try to get it all done in a month. They might actually run out of compute and have to shut down. And they did. I think they didn't
But I
want
think
that.
it's a very good
They didn't
strategy
want
also.
that PR nightmare. Yeah.
They actually, it's a very good strategy because it's actually stress testing. Because when they give this period, this short period, it actually shows them what would be the maximum usage look like, because it's causing desperation within people. It's
It's a
causing
flash
FOMO.
equivalent of a flash sale, right? Yeah,
So
you're
it's
right.
like it's actually how it's they're peaking it early. They're peaking usage, so they're trying to understand what their peak usage would look like. Just come out. There's 2 weeks to use it. Everybody's blowing through plans, getting more subscriptions. And let me break down the cost for you guys a little bit on how much you get. So on a $20 sub, you get about 200 $400 of compute with
At
Anthropic
API
at API
price.
pricing. Uh, on the $100 you get about 2,000, and on the $200 you get about 4,000, 8,000. Sorry, $8,000 worth of compute. So it's quite heavy. And on OpenAI you get even more. You get 14,000. You get 7,000 on the $100 plan, and you get 700 on the $20 plan. So you can see where the usage is going, like how much usage you get out of it. But I really think, and I hope I'm not wrong with this one, but they're profitable even at our level. How much we use it on a $100 plan, they're still making a profit out of it, because their cost to run compute at the Colossus one is about $1 billion a month, is what they're charging. Elon is charging
Hmm.
Anthropic to use it. That compute is probably driving in a lot more revenue than just $1 billion. So they are actually become cash flow positive for the first time recently, Anthropic.
Or at least the Colossus.
They're operationally profitable. They're
Oh, they're
operationally
operationally cash flow positive. Is that true?
they're profitable operational. So they made an operational profit
That's
in
not counting their presumably their salary expenses high.
the salary expenses they haven't counted, but I'm saying, like, just to run the models, they're running the models on a profit. And even if people are doing this, the actual model costs are very low, because DeepSeek shows it to us. If DeepSeek can run it 1 trillion parameter model at the price which Cerebrus or Grok gives you, a 30 billion parameter model, the costs are not that high to run these models. I
So
personally believe that.
so the margin's really high. That's effectively what you're saying.
I'm telling you, it's like pharma. It's like the pharma industry. You don't understand why the medicine costs so much, but you understand under insurance why it costs such little, and why in India it costs such little compared to where it costs. And there's cost plus drugs and everything. So I think it's a very similar market, and this is what's been going on in my brain and how I've been viewing it. And I truly think, like, okay, you have a cost thing now. We cannot really move away from these labs right now, because Anthropic and OpenAI are far, far, far ahead of the competition. Like, I'm talking for frontier work, for actual work, like, research work, frontier work, development, where you don't want mistakes, where you're working on high stakes, where you're working on important things. Anthropic and OpenAI are a cut above the rest by quite a bit. And Deep SWE, which is a great bench, shows us this. Now, the Mythos and the Fable numbers are a bit misleading, because Fable actually refuses a lot of questions, so it's showing in line with GPT 5.5. But I promise you, it's a far, far, far more capable model. It's by far
Then
the most capable
it's
model.
actually being tested at right, right.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, the cost thing, where I feel like we are in this cost cycle, is we're actually seeing lower pricing, because when Opus 4.1 came out last year, it was $70 or $80. So it's more expensive than what Mythos is right now to us. And they
So are you?
only dropped.
Yeah. Let me paraphrase. What you're saying is for the frontier labs. Is the cost of providing inference, even with like per token cost with even better models, is actually falling, which is Moore's law, right? Moore's law, I'm sure
Yeah,
applies.
100%.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'll give you a thing. The Vera, the latest generation of NVIDIA GPUs haven't come into play yet. They haven't been put online. They're still in production. They haven't been. So when those come in, the costs are eventually going to fall, because each generation GPU just makes it more efficient. Now Mythos is claim to be around 6 to 10 trillion parameter model, which is around where GPT 5.5 is supposed to be. Fable. So it's around where GPT 5.5 is supposed to be. It is essentially the $50 pricing is also Anthropic tax. Sonnet is probably the same size as DeepSeek, and they charge $15 per million tokens out. So you can take it like that, and DeepSeek is making, not losing money at that point at $1, or these Chinese labs are making money at this point. They're not making losing money. He's a Cursor, and Cursor is giving Composer 2.5 cheap as anything. Like it is super cheap. So if these companies are making money on these, let's say up to 2 trillion parameter models at this cost, you have to think that Anthropic at 50x, 15x, or even 25x is making money. It's not like they're got, and as you said, the gym membership thing. 90% of people don't even use 5% of that influence.
I mean, I look at myself and I feel like shit. I'm paying $100 a month, and I'm using it. Let's say what 3, 4, 5 hours a day, but I'm not doing it consistently because obviously it's the summer. I have family. I'm doing stuff. I'll go.
We don't use it that often.
I'll go a whole day without actually using it and be like, oh crap. I mean, it's like again, it's like having a gym membership. In my case, maybe I'm part of Sam's Club or whatever. Like or the other thing, maybe the other analogy is like basically having an HBO Max subscription and not you and
Watching one TV series.
and going for days without watching anything, right? And you're like, and there's something at the
It's like
back
we
of
have
your head
Netflix.
like I should be watching more TV. I mean, that's I think where I feel right now, and again, I think this really brings us back to me personally. I've said this multiple times. I wrote about this, on my 2 blog posts this last few weeks, is that we're sort of being pulled along here. Like effectively, whether we like it or not, we live in this age. I mean, this
Yeah,
is the other part of. I think the other thing that I'm saying through this podcast and to whoever will listen is the one thing you cannot ignore is that this stuff is here to stay. Okay, it's not going to change. It's forever going to disrupt entire industries, if not entire.
and
It's
Mythos has made us feel that for the first time. Like this is the first inkling I've got of proper, like, understanding that where it can displace
Yeah,
proper
I
proper.
mean, I think I've felt that way for a while. I mean, I've certainly felt I've been feeling that way since 2023 when I first used Copilot to write an entire block of code for me because it felt like to me that I could see from there to where we are today just felt like a straight line. Maybe it was
Straight
a
line,
very
yeah.
straight line, but it was a straight line. So I knew that. It's just that now it's really all around us. People that are not using this tool are a bit like the Luddites who were maybe saying, what's this new electricity thing? I'm just going to stick with my gas lamps. And I think this is a phase. I love my steam power and I love I love my gas lamp because it's so much warmer. No, this is a one-way street. It's here to stay. You have to embrace it. And the best thing you can do for yourself is educate yourself. And I think again that's a perfect segue to the last portion of our talk of our podcast this week. Why don't you tell them about what we're building together?
So, just taking it a little further from what Sid said, and where it is, what it's going to cost, and how the problem of it becoming something which is every day in our lives. Now, you have to understand when you're using something every day in your lives. Let's see, a Netflix subscription, electricity, and we touted close to electricity on how it works. Electricity, your gas bill, everything. You're monitoring all of these things, right? With your AI usage, let's say even on a even if you're on a subscription, each of these subscriptions have a log which they store on your computer. If you're using Cloud Code, Codex, the Claude app, and I'm sure a lot of you are using the OpenAI app or the Claude app on your desktop, or you can pull in your API. So we came up with something, and we were like, people don't understand what model to use when. Like, we are understanding it slowly. We're not experts at it. We sometimes we just use the model we like the most for everything. But we came up with something, and similar to how when you walk into a nice restaurant and they hand you a wine list, you have no idea on which wine to pick. So we took the idea of a sommelier, and we thought, why don't we have an AI sommelier? Why don't we get all the information of what you're using, how you're using it, and show it to you? And then you also have a sommelier or a smart AI assistant which can guide you into helping you make better decisions, right? Now, let's say you're spending $500 a month on API pricing on some models, right? Now, I'd like to take the Airbnb. case study for this, how they used Quen instead of Anthropic or ChatGPT APIs and ran it locally, or so they saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on this. Now, everybody doesn't have engineers or consultants who can do this for you. Like, we want to come out and build something which will help you work on this and help you actually learn what model to use when. And if a 30 billion parameter model, such as Quen, or a 1 trillion parameter model, such as Sonnet, DeepSeek, or you need Mythos, and task based assignment of what model you should use. So it helps you actually and teaches you on how to efficiently use the money that you have for with AI, right? You don't want to spend it all. Might not need $100 subscription. You might not even be utilizing up to $30 of that. So, what kind of subscription tier do you fall into? What model you should use, when you should use it, and just monitor what you're using AI for. Is it useful? Is it not useful? Should you even be using AI for this? Maybe some kind of AI disconnect is probably good now. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, thanks, Avyay, for coming up with the term and coming up with the idea. I think we all brainstormed it together. This was, and we love the idea of the sommelier. It's definitely an aspirational name, right, at this point, because we are certainly not at the sommelier level sort of expertise.
Not yet.
But we certainly felt like, in much the same way as uh, we thought of it, we thought of, remember, we thought of many different analogies. We thought
Yeah.
of power tools, we thought of knives, and they were all great, but they didn't feel appropriate. And I think I like the sommelier analogy and the wine analogy for two reasons. One is wines can come from many different parts of the world, and
Absolutely.
every region of the world is going to say our wine is the best, right? So there's that. Number two, there's a bewildering array of them. There's literally thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of well, tens of thousands of varietals. Number three, each vineyard, especially the really fancy ones, have tiers within them. So there's sort of the table wine, there's the Grand Cru, and then there's whatever the appellation, right? I don't even know the Haute-Brions and whatever. I'm not a wine guy. I just play one on TV. But the point is that the analogy really stuck with us. We liked the fact that you need a friendly, helpful person saying, you don't really need a Barolo for this, for this white meat. If you're having fish, you might as well just have a rosé or a white wine. It'll do the job. It's adequate. So my feeling is, at some point today or in the near future, there'll be an explosion of models. And I think the explosion is going to actually be a divergent explosion. What that effectively means is that right now the models are all about consolidating and building bigger models that can consolidate and have even more parameters and do even
Yeah.
more, right? Eventually, it's going to become the case that no, people will say, first of all, this is not sustainable. These models run really heavy. This is not a really good use of our time, of the Earth's resources at the end of the day. If I'm going to just be using it to code, and specifically I'm doing embedded coding, I just need this specific variant of this model, and I know what I'm using it for. I don't need to use it for everything else. If I need to use it for something else, I can simply swap it out. I mean, Open Router is happy to basically run everything, and you can literally just mid turn, or even mid loop, you can actually switch models. So all that stuff is coming. We just felt that today, what Sommelier will do is function not less like a recommender, more like a wine buyer, right? Or effectively, we couldn't come up with we we looked it
I
up.
have.
So sommeliers are in charge of basically the wine budget. They effectively say, look, I have a wine budget. The sommelier is also sometimes the wine buyer, and they'll come and say, in this budget, we can get you the following three top tier wines and the following 50 bottom tier wines.
I have one point on this, as I wanted to say, and the thing was that the only person who can distinguish a good $20 wine and a bad $20 wine is a sommelier. So
Yes.
that kind of expertise. So how do we tell you that, okay, is the $100 wine actually worth the $100 wine, or does this $20 wine actually keep up with this $100 wine? At different times there's different kind of requirements you have. Do you like it this way? Do you like it this way? What is your preference? And one thing which doesn't get mapped enough is preference. I think
Yes.
sommeliers have preference, but we're trying to bake in your preference and what your workflow and tailor it to you and how that would work.
Yeah. I agree. And AI Sommelier's job today, it's very much a work in progress. We will be sort of releasing the first version of it soon. We hope some of you get to use it and try it. The primary way of interacting with it is you literally, what we think the best way to basically make it happen is there's a client that you download and run in the background on your let's say you have a 5-person team, and you each of those 5 people are either on a sort of a Claude company subscription, or even if they're not, let's say, I mean, for a lot of us, we have our own Claude Max subscriptions. That doesn't mean that our collaboration is not really some sort of a team, right? We're doing teamwork. I mean, Avya works on the same code base. Then he commits it. He writes the markdown file. He writes the agent.md file, pushes it to the GitHub, and then I continue working on it. Now imagine a dashboard that's showing not only which models we're using, but how much we're spending on them. So effectively, it's like a mileage meter. We're actually getting to see what kind of mileage we're getting from each of the models, right? And we're not going to try to basically come up with metrics, because I think the worst thing that people are coming up with are things like vanity metrics, like who's used the most, who's burnt the most tokens, which is the worst kind of. That's like saying who's burnt the most petrol. I mean, come on, if you're running a fleet and your fleet comprises both 18 wheelers and
It's
and
a
and
useful metric. It tells you who's wasting the most, but
who's wasting
it's
the
not.
most? That's the wrong metric. The metric that ought to be done is mileage. It's saying how many kilometers did this fleet traverse and how much was the spend per kilometer. Now, we don't yet know what that kilometer is going to be, the unit, the sort of the standardized metric of uh, what goal achievement might be. So we said, let's not use that. Let's just instead have a mirror, essentially a dashboard showing you how your token usage is trending, and what you're using your models for. Because I think that kind of sort
Where
of
what
insight
so yes.
is invaluable for anyone. Like, a CFO would love that, a CTO would love that. I mean, they should care about this stuff, because at the end of the day, it's their company's money that's being spent to do this. So it really is. And again, I will say one other thing. Each and every one of the frontier model companies, whether it's Claude or GPT or Google or probably even the Cursor guys, uh, are going to sell you their version of the Sommelier dashboard. But make no mistake, that's their dashboard. It's literally optimized for their usage. You need something that sits on top of that, that says, okay, I'm looking at my token usage along each of these frontier labs,
And
but I need one that combines all my usage metrics.
it's also useful for not just these the people looking at it. It's useful for yourself, because sometimes you think, what have I worked on, what have I spent all of this thing on, why have I spent 50 million tokens on a project which I was just having for fun, or why am I using my Mythos usage on this? Like, it helps you understand and delegate or budget in a way. Because look, the era of endless AI may continue, but it doesn't mean that you use it recklessly, because at the end of the day, it does take real resources to run these models, right? You don't want to waste. Don't want to do what most of these benchmark people are doing, or just running benchmarks just for the sake of it. It ruins it for actual power users or people who are using it for good. There's a lot of scientists out there. There's a lot of people working on research, or actually trying to build products which better the world, right? And for those people, they don't have unlimited bankroll. They're on a limited budget, or they have a grant, or they have a specified amount they want to spend. And for those people, this is for people actually want to doing real work, or even enterprise or anybody. Like, but the main focus is, and the main reason we come up with this is because first we want to monitor what we're doing and see where we're actually working. What are we working on? How are we working on this? I have an idea on what projects I worked on, how much I did it, but this will actually give you real thing. And from that you can tell, okay, was it actually useful to use AI here? Could I have done this without AI? And what skills do I need to keep sharp? It's basically the I think it'll become an essential piece of software in your life. Like, how you monitor your steps, you look at what you've done. It's like it's one of those things which just lives there, in your phone.
Yeah. And
And
we're imagining this as a community driven project. I think we are gonna open source it. It will be licensed pretty liberally. We think that there's enough of a market for sort of a managed version of this thing, because not everyone's going to be able to set it up properly. So there's a services business. We don't even know how that works, but I truly believe that that's how it should be, because truly the power of this product is going to be the insights that people glean, and that we can somehow add to the sort of the crowdsourced
and
brain,
and the
the sommelier.
and the teaching aspect of it, the teaching
That's right.
aspect of it, with
That's right.
learning, like eventually the reason we do the moving target and what we come to think, we want to pass on knowledge, right? And we want people to be able to use this. So the whole idea behind it is very, it's very selfless from us, because we're trying to actually put something out there which will help people. Like it's not, like our other agents were quite commercial, or they had a reason why we were building it from a certain use case. But this is something I believe that will actually help people, even like, even if it's not the revenue front runner, or even if it's because we're open sourcing it. And if there is a managed business, there is a managed business. But the main goal of it is to shed light on what can be done with AI, how to use AI, and what are you using it for. Like, what is your workflow. Like, you have to manage your time, like you manage your time and day, you will have to manage your AI as well. And since it's becoming such a
Yeah.
essential part of your life, you like, a lot of people have the ability, and I'll put it, can have an hour shower every day, right? That's not very good for your water bill, and you wouldn't do it. Sometimes you just want to wash your hands, you don't need to always jump into the shower, right? And that's what it is. You meter your water usage, you meter your electricity, you meter everything. No matter how many resources you have, it doesn't mean you waste them. So this is a better way to save money, to actually efficiently use money and help companies, people build more with what they have, rather than just running through it.
Yeah, and eventually what I'm hoping this yields is like almost like a taxonomy of tasks with the kind of the best matched model along with the model effort setting. So remember that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
these are multiple dimensional problems, right? So like you might say, okay, for this type of task, you don't really you can just get it done with a sonnet, or an
Yes.
Opus
Or
4.5
you can even
with,
just use a
with
haiku
medium.
model quickly.
Sorry.
You can just use haiku, or you can use
Haiku if
just
you wanted to. So, but I think that level of of information density will only come about if people agree. So again, this is again sort of again going off on a tangent. We don't want to talk about it here, but the ultimate aim of this is for it to be a community-driven project where the brain or the wisdom of this sommelier that's being built is being built one customer at a time, and it's actually not customer but user, community member, right? They're contributing back their um, anonymized information back to the to the hive, or to the sort of centralized, not even the centralized, this the actual community knowledge, so that the overall product becomes better. I think that's the vision. It's initially just a dashboard. That's really all we're doing. So, but we think it can grow to become a little bit.
yeah. And with these world, the stronger, powerful, amazing models coming out, you want to spend all of your tokens. So Anthropic is definitely seeing how much you're spending, so I think you should also know how much you're spending.
Yeah, and they go through so many. They make it so hard for you to actually inspect your usage. So all the caveats, like I mean, I use Claude.ai because I hate their desktop. I don't even have it on my desk. I don't use their co-work tool. Obviously, I use Claude Code, but I was use so my interaction with Mythos was maybe about, I don't know, 10 turns, about a million tokens, maybe 2 million tokens. I couldn't get an accurate accounting of that. And Mythos themselves, Fable themselves admitted that, oh, we don't do that with Claude.ai. We obfuscated, they didn't use that word, but they do that. And now, at least with the slash usage command on Claude.code, you at least get an idea of what the API pricing is.
They
At least
inflated a little bit, actually, what I found, because when I pulled the direct usage, actually, it was lower. Because because with the AI Sommelier, it showed a lower usage than what the slash usage was showing. So it might be inflated, might be doubled, it might be something. There's
interesting.
something there. There's something fishy there. I'm telling you, there's something fishy, because it said we used a lot less tokens on AI Som, so it showed inflated usage a little bit on that. So maybe it was just counting something.
There's a reckoning here somewhere, because it's like basically saying that AT&T, we're living in a world where AT&T charges you either a fixed price to make all the calls you want. Remember back in the day,
But
that's how it worked.
In the UK, they still have that. Vodafone
No, no,
has.
I know, but then they give you an itemized bill, and your minutes are like five times what you expected. and you're like, what the hell, why is my bill twice as expensive? It's because they're overcounting or their accounting system is broken. So I think somehow the accounting aspects of all of these companies, and I think this goes back to our original, how Databricks broke my heart in 2020, was it feels like 200 years.
It's feeling a little data bricksy.
It's feeling like a Databricksy thing where they are basically under so much pressure to show, positive cash flow and revenue growth, that they're cutting corners as far as accounting is
They're probably
concerned.
charging you more, but they're probably charging you more because they probably just have a system which is
They,
not actually that optimized, because they
yeah,
don't gain much from optimizing their system. What
no, I
does
know that,
efficiency?
but they're playing fast and loose, and I don't think they should do that because it's ultimately going to get people pissed off, and that's not a good thing. So yeah, that's my view.
Great. So, on that note, we'll leave you guys to it. I hope you have a good listen. I hope you enjoyed this thing. I hope you play with Mythos and tell us of Fable and tell us what you think of it. But I think it's a great model. It's a very capable model. It's got the ability to do amazing things, but I don't think it's for everyone. And that's where I leave it. I don't think it's for everyone.
Yeah, and
Have a good.
I second that sentiment. I think that that Mythos should be used for sort of your heaviest lifts. For anything else, Opus 4.6 is, or even 5 is actually sufficient. It's adequate. You just have to give it the right prompts and sit back.
Take care, guys. Have a good one, and hopefully you see the Knicks win again.